Welcome to this complete beginner whittling lesson. In this video, we are going to look at how to choose and use your first strop. So we have several learning goals in this video. You will be able to identify what a strop and stropping compound are. You will be able to apply compound to a strop. You will be able to demonstrate proper technique for stropping your whittling knife. And finally, you will be able to choose a strop. So let's start with what's a strop. I'm going to move these out of the way for a second and say this is a strop. So fundamentally what that is a piece of leather glued onto a backing, in this case wood, with a stropping or sharpening compound applied to the leather. It's those three elements. Now technically you don't need a base, but it's helpful. So usually you'll have leather. Sometimes different materials could be used there, but you'll most commonly find leather. Some people love to use the back of a cereal box or other things, but as a beginner, it's going to be leather. You'll also notice that the leather is going to be rough side up on the strop, and that's intentional because what sharpens the knife in the strop is not the strop itself. It's not the leather. It's the compound, the stropping compound or sharpening compound that's in the leather. So this is a block of stropping compound that's been rubbed into the leather in order to make it sharpen. And so the rough side of the leather holds that compound in, and that compound is really just microabrasive stuck together with wax and other things. Sometimes it could be a powder, sometimes it could be a paste, but you'll most commonly find it in a bar like this. As a beginner, I would probably recommend a bar, although if you get a powder or something, that's fine. So that's what a strop is, and that's what compound is. Now you might find a few different types of compound. I've got this green compound here. I've also got a piece of yellow compound here. That's a flux cut gold compound. And those are probably the most common ones that you'll see. There are different colors. You could spend a lot of time reading and thinking about different grits and things like that. But in general, the green that you get from any kind of carving supply is going to be fine. The flex cut gold is going to be fine as a beginner. That's gonna work well for you. So the next thing we're going to look at is how to apply compound to your strop. So this strop does already have compound on it. If you were a complete beginner and you are buying your first strop, it's not going to have compound. It's not going to have this green stuff in here when you get it, or gold stuff, which is what you'll get if you buy the flex cut strop. But in any case, if you can draw with a crayon, you can apply stropping compound. This one doesn't need more right now, but I'm going to do a little bit more anyway to show you. I'm really just drawing like that, back and forth, rubbing it into the leather, and it'll apply. And you can kind of see where it's a little bit more green in the areas where I've added the compound, so I'll just go along here. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you may have to work really hard to make sure you get it all the way across the leather. It would be good to have a nice even coating of the compound across the leather when you're doing that. If you're having trouble getting it even, I'd recommend doing something like this. I'll use my ruler here and just kind of use that to kind of spread it out. I don't really have to do that here, but if you were having trouble, you could do that. You could use a credit card, the back of the knife, whatever, until you've got that compound evenly put across there. How much compound to put on? I would say you want to make sure that you can see it. You don't want so much on that it's totally caked over the leather. You still want that nap on it, the nap of the leather, and that is why the spreading it will help with that a little bit. So that was how to apply the compound. Now let's look at how to strop. So I'm going to use this knife as an example here, and this is a flat ground knife, which we talked about in the knife selection video, which means that I can very easily set it flat on the strop, and that angle from the spine down to the cutting edge is consistent. It'll lay flat on there really well. And in order to sharpen it, all I really have to do is drag it away from the cutting edge, and that will start sharpening my knife. It's really as simple as that. But A few things to note while we're doing that. So first of all, this is a flat ground knife, so I can lay it pretty well flat. There are different schools of thought on that. Some people will tell you, even on a flat ground knife, to put it up just a hair's width, so you can see a little bit of a shadow, or a dime's width to be able to do that. This knife in particular is a flat ground knife, and I've stropped it like this for years, and I haven't had any issues with it. But if you're having trouble getting your knife sharp, and you're doing it flat, you might want to add just a little bit of an angle to it. The second thing you want to note is that you want to keep that at the same level all the way through. So when I strop, I'm going to keep my finger on it lightly. I'm not pushing hard. You don't need a lot of pressure, and I'm going to slide it back. I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to lift it straight up. And the temptation once you get going quickly is going to be to bring it back and just roll off, right? And if you roll off, you have the danger of rounding off that tip and actually making it more blunt and less sharp. So you're never going to go forward with it. You're always going to go backward away from the cutting edge, lightly, straight up, straight down, back like that. And then after you do it, we'll say 5 to 10 times, you're going to want to flip it over and do it away from you. Same thing, flat on the edge, straight out, straight up, straight down, and that. And that's all there is to it. Now, again, if you're buying a new knife, I would read whatever info the manufacturers put out about the angle they tell you to hold it at, and things like that. But in general, with a flat ground knife, you'll be able to strop it fairly flat, and that makes it very, very easy. You didn't start whittling because you wanted to learn how to sharpen knives. You started whittling because you wanted to whittle. A quick note with the flex cut knives, because I did recommend them in the choosing a beginner knife video. If you're using that flex cut knife, they do tell you to hold it flat against the cutting edge, but there's that secondary bevel, the Scandi grind on that, so you're going to want to hold it flat on the cutting edge. It's very easy to do with the flex cut knives, and you're going to do the same thing like that. Okay, but make sure it's not flat on the top part of the knife, but that the cutting edge is flat against the edge. Okay. And the great thing about stropping and getting a knife that's sharp is you can really keep it sharp by regularly stropping it. Now, what does it mean to regularly strop a knife? Well, first of all, in general, after each carving session, you should probably strop your knife. That may vary a little bit depending on which type of knife that you're using. But in general, after each carving session, you're going to want to strop. If you're carving and you start to notice that the cuts you're making here are a little bit cloudy, they're not shiny. They should be shiny when you make those cuts, not cloudy. And this knife is pretty sharp, so I'm not seeing cloudy cuts there. But if they're cloudy, that means that it's not sharp. So I can show you real quick here on a knife blade that I do not believe is sharp. Just with a pocket knife that I have here. I don't know if you can see that or not. You can see it. I'm struggling more to cut, which is another sign, but there's just a cloudiness to the cuts there that's not shiny the way that the other ones were. It might be difficult to see on the video, but that's what you're looking for. If it starts to get cloudy while you're carving, or you start to feel with the same knife, the same wood, that it's just struggling a little bit more, then it's probably time to stop and strop. Often, all you have to do is strop, 10 or 20 times per side, and that's fine. Some people will recommend you do the countdown method. You do 10, 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, and count down to 0. That's a helpful way to make sure you get a good amount of stropping in. And sometimes you'll be surprised after you strop that what you thought was a sharp knife is even sharper. So that's how to strop. There are lots of videos on how to strop out there on YouTube, and certainly you can watch others and pick up other tips from them. But that's what I would share on that. So the last thing I want to share is some recommendations. So this is my simple recommendation. If you can, just buy the flex cut strop. I think it's a good strop that is a good size, easy for a beginner to use. The Flex Cut Gold compound works fine. You can see how much wear I've gotten on this one, and you can see that I do have multiple strops now, but I mostly just use the Flex Cut strop and try different compounds with it if I'm going to try a different compound. So if you can get it, it's usually $17 or $18. Now, you might say $17 or $18 is a lot of money to spend on a block of wood, a piece of leather, and this piece of compound, which is really only a few bucks if you buy it by yourself or comes free with a lot of their knives. Well, that's true. So if you're a do-it-yourself kind of person, you can find other videos that will show you how to make these, or you're probably clever enough to figure out how to cut out a piece of wood, cut out a piece of leather, and you'll still have to buy your compound somewhere. But you can save money on your strop if that's something you want to do. And that's fine. But for most of you, as a complete beginner, I would recommend just buy the Flex Cut one. It's easy to find. Now, a couple other things I'll say about that is, as a beginner, I would recommend that you have a strop that is wider than the blade of your beginner knife. It doesn't mean that you can't strop something larger. So if I had a 2-inch blade, here's a blade that's longer, I can strop it and I just pull it down while I go, right? Like that, or like that. But that's just an extra step. It's just an extra thing that you've got to do if you're a complete beginner. I think having a strop that's wider than your knife is helpful. It's not a requirement. A lot of people work with narrower strops, and that's fine. But I think it's helpful for your complete beginner. And the other thing I would recommend is that you do put it on a block if you're making one. You can just take your chunk of leather. You can buy pieces of leather as strops on Amazon or whatever. I would still put it on a board so you've got it elevated, and you're not just you're going to end up having to put it on something else that may or may not be level. I think having it on a block is helpful. So those are the things that I would recommend. Make it wider than your knife blade. Put it on a block. If you can make one, you can find a cheaper one, great. If not, I really do think the Flex Cut one is perfect. And I just keep buying multiples of these and adding different compounds or replacing them when I've really worn them out. You can see how much use this one has got, and they're excellent tools. So that's it. I hope you enjoy your first strop, and happy carving.